Hi everyone, this is Dan, and this is Daredevil, The Man Without Fear, by the great Frank Miller and John Romita Jr. So I decided to jump over to Daredevil just because this is probably my second favorite Marvel superhero, and honestly, definitely my second favorite run of comics, I guess, within Marvel, I should say. And this graphic novel is effectively a retelling of Daredevil's origin story. This Daredevil being good old Matt Murdock. For those of you who watched all the Netflix shows and whatnot, or just obviously from the comics. But yeah, man, this is a sweet graphic novel, and if you wanted to kind of just jump into Daredevil, this is a great graphic novel to pick up. Not very expensive, beautiful art by John Romita Jr. and just freaking outstanding writing by Frank Miller. And what I kind of want to do is just kind of go over real quick. So chapter, or I should say issue 1, this is kind of like a five-part mini-series I got put together as a graphic novel. And the first issue kind of just talks about Matt Murdock as a kid growing up. The usual kind of issues talk about his father, Jack Murdock, and his boxing career, and then the accident with the radioactive sludge that basically blinds him, and then effectively begins to create the arc of who Daredevil really is. Daredevil's a pretty interesting superhero. He doesn't really have superpowers. He's just blind, and from his blindness his other senses get better or more acute, but he really isn't like superhuman strength or healing powers or commands weather like the X-Men or something like that. He really is just a regular dude who just happens to have his senses are a lot more sensitive than other people, right? And that allows him to function despite his blindness. So the first part kind of goes through that story, and then it goes through his father getting killed, and he goes and gets his vengeance, and other crazy things happen. I really recommend you go buy this book and read it yourself. Very, very good. I did want to talk about one thing, which was him meeting up with Elektra, and the way John Romita Jr. draws Elektra is both weird and also kind of interesting. They're like the writing and the story of him and Elektra in this graphic novel is freaking awesome. Freaking love it. There's a lot of like really cool, stuff. Like he makes it back, and who's waiting for him in his apartment? Pretty freaking cool, and really crazy that Marvel kind of did this in the '80s, right here. And yeah, dude, this scene, I'm gonna come back to it in a little bit, but yeah, this whole scene after is freaking cool. And even though the Elektra story doesn't really like 100% seamlessly fit into this, and you kind of will, I'll just explain why that is, but it's still freaking cool, and I like it a lot. And then it kind of breaks off from Elektra, and then we go into the introduction of the Kingpin, Matt Murdock's return back to Hell's Kitchen to go back and right wrongs and bring justice to his old neighborhood. Really, really cool story right here. This should look familiar to some of you. As far as I know, the Netflix show is heavily influenced by this graphic novel or miniseries right here. And yeah, that should look pretty familiar for those of you who have watched the Netflix show. Really cool is just sort of the beginnings of him becoming the hero known as Daredevil. He goes and he rescues this one girl who's kidnapped. Really, really cool. Here's what I want to talk about, and then this is sort of the end right here. Here's what I want to talk about, and that is the reason why you should buy this if you're a comic book fan in general, or even just a fan of Daredevil, is this addendum is freaking awesome. You kind of get to see, so this is revised draft number 2, 1988, when they made this one. So obviously this is a retelling of his origin story. This isn't the actual original origin story written way back in the days when like Daredevil 1 and all those other issues. But it's really cool to go and read this because you kind of see Frank Miller's like method and his technique. If you take a look at like Act 1 right here, he kind of writes it like a novel. it's not really written like he doesn't go, oh, like this is the panel here or this is, you know, dialogue, etc. He's just kind of like real quick writing what he wants, right? So like look at this, and I'm going to come back to the issue 1. I'm just going to read this paragraph. At age 8, Matt Murdock is a dirty-faced little terror. His hair is overgrown with weeds. Impoverished neighborhood of Hell's Kitchen is his home. Sun-baked streets and rattling fire escapes rattling fire escapes form his playground, right? That's just like the first paragraph description to kind of open it up and give it to John Romita Jr., right? I'm assuming they were probably in different places or whatever, and he just shipped this script over to him. And then, so how does he translate it? Booyah, freaking, yeah, he's freaking hanging out right here. Messy orange hair, you know, little of Hell's Kitchen, New York City, and whatnot. Just freaking perfect. One paragraph he gives him, John Romita Jr. gives him a freaking beautiful masterpiece right here. It's freaking awesome. And you can kind of go back into this script and kind of see like some really cool stuff right here. Just his whole thought process, and you can go back in and read it and see, okay, well, how did John Romita Jr. like translate that into a story and artwork? And this is really cool right here. So, story addenda. I'm just going to read right here. This is Frank Miller, 1990, sending some notes over to John Romita Jr., and I think this is Ralph Macchio. I don't know I think he was the editor of this. He's sending a note over to John Romita Jr., and he's saying, hey, John, on the Elektra stuff, keep in mind that Elektra is psychotic, right? Her expression should be frequently inappropriate, matter of fact, when she confesses to murder. This is a major aspect of her character and gets across the craziness without beating the reader over the head with it. So how does he translate that concept over to the Elektra story? I'll tell you how. Like, there you go. Walking in New York City, bunch of bums spy her. She's dressing up real nice. Corner her into a alleyway. Lo and behold, they didn't realize they got cornered in the alleyway. You can tell she's crazy because it's the middle of freaking winter in New York and she's just throwing her clothes off. Like, what the... Who does this? And of course, she just proceeds to just wreck these dudes without abandon, just absolutely crush them. You know, at the end of it, freaking takes her blood. I love New York City. It was a disappointing workout. Holy crap. That's freaking awesome right there. Yeah, I kind of wish the Elektra and the Netflix story was more like that. Holy crap, dude. And then it comes to the thumbnail that I have on this, and that is this little guy right here. So, very famous editor-in-chief at Marvel, Jim Shooter, has a pretty interesting philosophy that he kind of wrote down and kind of became what his expectations for what a comic book should have. And it's kind of interesting, so I'll just go over it real quick here. Characters must be introduced, situation must be established, conflict must be introduced, suspense must be built, a climax must be reached, and a resolution must be achieved. If this sounds familiar, it should be, because this is just a dramatic structure. This is like effectively the little Freytag pyramid or Freytag structure that you learned in like your English composition or your literature course in college or even high school, really. And it sounds extremely simple. And yet, even, you know, an absolute master like Frank Miller still follows this. And I'll show you here, right here. Not to kind of go over, you know, I'm not going to spoil it all right here, read it off. It's just, so, booyah, we're in New York City. It says we're in New York City. This is Matt Murdock. This is what he looks like. This is the situation and what he's kind of into. This is him, you know, he's kind of a bit of a maniac, and it shows here in these panels he's a bit of a maniac. Introduces his dad. Dad is a washed-up boxer, has problems making money, getting his kid, you know, together. Has to turn to some bad stuff to do that. Tells kid, don't be like me, even though Matt wants to be like his father. And he tells him, hey, don't follow my path. Go down your own path. Find a better future for yourself, right? And you might think, the Fixer's such a bad guy. That's the real antagonist. In this particular short, so this is the chapter 1, right? And it only goes to, it's only this much, right? And it's freaking brilliant because the whole story stands on itself. It's really, really good because the conflict here is Matt versus himself. He wants to be like his dad, but his dad wants him not to be like himself and tells him, you know, find your own path, do your own thing. And Matt does just that, right? And you know, you get a huge issue climax right here with him losing his sight and, you know, trying to deal with that now he really can't follow his dad's path, or at least in his eyes. The introduction of Stick and him showing him a new path and a new way to master his disability and still function. In fact, more than function, but be even greater than he was before. And then him, you know, coming to terms with his blindness and just finding this new powers to overcome the issue, and still be this kind of thing. One issue effectively, you know, accomplishes this very well, right? And it seems kind of silly for me to point this out, but it's actually kind of rare for new comics to do this. I've been reading like Absolute Carnage and House of X, Powers of X, and honestly, there are so many single issues that are just, they never do this, or they'll do like half of this, or maybe they'll do like the other half, or maybe little small parts right there. And what you get is that you cannot pick up any of these new comics and get a solid story out of them. You got to go and buy like 5 of them, which then brings up the freaking question, like, well, the hell's bells, why didn't you just freaking put it together in a damn graphic novel? You know, this one right here, this is one, you know, issue. You know, this isn't the whole graphic novel, and he gets the point across and hits this easily. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's the reason why I like the old stuff so much, is just they fall, even the masters follow a structure and execute it perfectly. It's pretty awesome. So anyway, yeah, just to kind of wrap this up, buy it, pretty awesome. Probably don't buy it for this price right here. You probably pick it up for a lot less. I'll leave a link to Amazon below. I think there's probably other places where you can pick this up for less money. But yeah, absolute masterpiece graphic novel, great read. Just especially if you just want to get into Daredevil or interested in the character, definitely pick this up. You can pick it up for pretty reasonable price, and it's a great read. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap this up to my next issue or next review. I'm probably gonna do, if I'm being honest, is yeah, that's right. We're gonna do a little bit of Comicsgate right here. Jawbreakers, Lost Souls. Obviously, I'm super late. This has been out for like freaking forever, but might as well do a review and get my eyes or my thoughts on the whole shebang right there. But yeah, Daredevil, Man Without Fear, freaking awesome. Pick it up. If you can find it on a good deal, just go ahead and get it, man. And if you like this video, you know, like and subscribe, and have any thoughts or any comments, put them down below. And I will see you next time.